I'm here today with Mark Reeves, the global partner in charge of capital markets at Capco. And the topic of discussion is really about change. So, Mark, how, are firms really thinking about change? Because, we're really looking at an age where, all you see in the paper are fines and new regulations and issues, and certainly regulation is driving change, but I'm really thinking more from a business innovation standpoint.
Change has become, in fact, a watchword for becoming regulatory compliant, and not much more than that. What you've seen is that people need to address their sustaining cost base, and a lot of entities have chipped away at their cost base, but are unable to invest for sustained cost differentiation. And that, I think, is the bit that needs to be freed up, but it's just not available at the moment.
One of the things that we did when I first got into the analysis business, we looked at technology spend. And I want to say this was back in probably mid to late 90s. Folks were investing almost 70 to 80% of their IT budget in new, change the bank issues and not run the bank issues. Now I would venture to say a lot of that is almost flipped. So how are folks free up budget? How do folks start thinking about change?
I think you're starting to see a new set of leaders who know they've got to address this core cost challenge. And I articulate that as up until 5-6 years ago and in the sort of early post-crisis era, the change challenge from the business was save me 10, 15, 20% on my annual cost base. Now that's changed again, so now it's 50%. And unfortunately, to save 50%, you can't do it the same way we did it before. You've actually got to drive much more fundamental change. So people want to do that, they just are unable to do it. They're running on annual budgets. They don't have the flexibility within their workforce. They're running out of the talent to drive and champion that big change. So I think that's one of the challenges that banks face is just how do they retain that talent and mobilize that talent on the more strategic agenda rather than just keeping the bank running.
That's actually a really good question because certainly talent drives the industry and drives change. And if everybody's hunkered down and everybody's just doing what they need to do to survive, the folks that are really innovative say, I don't feel like doing this. I'm going to go someplace else. So how do they look to do that? Do they try to carve out areas, or do we look to try to send some of the traditional day-to-day run the bank things off to some foreign country to run, or how are folks thinking about that?
So I think in the run the bank world, it's been relatively easy to outsource, and you've seen many entities, in fact most entities these days have moved that to a lower cost location or doing it a bit more efficiently. And so they've realized that cost benefit and they've driven that. The challenge they now face is they still want to change. They have people who originally had the DNA to drive the change, but those people aren't really driving change. They've become what I call small change managers. They're just looking at sort of lots of little incremental activities. And what now needs to happen is the ability to free up capacity and create an opportunity, but also provide a platform for those talented change individuals to genuinely succeed and work in a place where they feel they're realizing their potential. And it's probably still having fun to some extent. There's a sort of odd fun component here, to your point.
How are firms doing that? Are they looking at, certainly, there's a lot of talk about cloud infrastructure and shared infrastructure and, figuring out how to, mutualize, different types of operational expenses, or is it just kind of like, oh, we'll just put everything in a cloud and forget about it, or is it really more fundamental kind of things than that?
So I think I view it very much as a people business. Change is a people business. It always has been, or always will be. And I think what some institutions, and we're benefiting as Capco from that, are doing is starting to think about how they can work with an entity that is purely focused on change and purely focused on the management of talent in change, and also focused on doing change cost effectively. And they're partnering with us to do that. And that drives three behaviors. So the first thing is that they typically get greater cost efficiency, which is key from a change perspective because that frees up budget for the more strategic investments we talked about earlier. The second thing is it means that they can transfer their staff but still have the loyalty of those staff, but they're working in an entity where they get that fun factor, let's call it the fun factor, to push it through. And then the third thing is it just gives them more flexibility, so they have more choices, whether it's where they deploy the staff, which bits of change they put them on, whether they put them on strategic programs, so they have more ability to be fungible, is the expression often used.
And so let's just say we want to create a new product, or we want to whatever, we're going to be doing something new. They come to an organization and basically say, hey, look, guys, we really want to do this stuff. We really don't have the mechanisms of management and to a certain extent, ability to draw that talent or keep that talent happy over a longer period of time. They come to you and say, hey, look, guys, we want to work with you, and you guys take some of these people, you put them on our projects, you kind of help incubate that stuff, or you take some of the stuff I don't want to deal with so I can free up bandwidth to make these guys happy, or it's a combination of both?
I think it's a blend of those, and actually the way we believe is best practice to articulate is that you take the non-bank subject matter experts, so the people who do project management, BA type work, business testing, maybe testing, and you create a fungible pool. Mm-hmm. And then in the instances we've seen be very successful, Capco's run with that fungible pool. So the bank retains 50% of its change talent, mm-hmm. which is very specific to them. It's the guy who absolutely understands their securities finance architecture, or the person who's built out their clearing models or whatever, they hold on to. But the core discipline of change, the process type roles, then migrate to Capco, which means that they have a flexible and deployable workforce to do those things.
And so when they need them, they're at their disposal. When they don't need them, they can work on other things that are going on.
And what we've found is that, of course, it gives those people also career options, and they develop as well as they go through, because they're working on multi-client, or they're working on different projects actually within the client bank as well, so it gives them more flexibility and enjoyment.
That's a really interesting way of looking at things. Do we think, is the adoption of this, I assume you think it's going to be pretty significant?
We're pretty confident it's going to be significant. We've got 2 or 3 early adopters, mm-hmm. Which is great from that perspective, and at quite a lot of scale. We're already seeing the success. We know it works now, which is a critical sort of thing mm-hmm. we needed to see. And we're now starting to see quite a few people talk to us about it. Clearly, it's a big thing to do. It's a very English expression, but I used to say that the change group was often called the crown jewels of a bank, and it seems odd to look at this crown jewels, but in today's cost pressures and in today's difficult markets, you have to look at the crown jewels as well as just what seems the easy stuff to do. So we think there's a wave of activity in this way. And we expect that to sustain over quite a long time, because the industry is going to have the same pressures probably for at least 5 years, probably into 10.
Don't disagree with that. I think there we'll call it a wrap for you guys out there. It's a really interesting idea how to think about change within organizations that are being deluged by regulatory and other cost pressures. So with that, I'm Larry Tabb, founder and CEO of Tabb Group. I'm here again with Mark Reeves, global head of capital markets for Capco, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.